The views expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of WPSL. However, we are the ones that have encouraged you to like and share them on social media and with all your friends and neighbors, because if it's happening on the Treasure Coast, you'll hear about it on the Sue-Elensanders Show. As a matter of fact, here she is right now, Sue-Elensanders.
Funny that you introduce it as a matter of fact. Here she is right now, because there is a time in the history of this radio show where I used to, when I was working full-time and I would come in just to do the show, I would be like cruising in right under the wire. I'd be like the music would be playing and I would be coming in and my guest would already be in a seat and I'd be coming in and sitting down.
We'd hear your brakes as you entered the parking lot.
I know. I used to, when I was working full-time, and now I'm regular to do the show, I would be like cruising in right under the wire. I'd be like the music would be playing and I would be coming in and my guest would already be in a seat and I'd be coming in and sitting down.
We'd hear your brakes as you entered the parking lot.
I know. But, now I'm regularly here at least 15 minutes before taping. So whoever said you can't change, what's the expression? A dog stripes?
You can teach an old dog new tricks.
You can't.
I didn't want to be the one to have to say that.
You
but
can't teach an old dog new tricks.
That pertains
and you
to me.
can change a zebra's stripes.
Yes, you can. Yes.
At any rate, I'm happy to be here, and I'm so excited that my guest today is a gentleman I've known for very many years. His name is Darryl Bay, and he is both the founder and the president of Bluebird Educational Foundation. And he has long been involved in the music scene here in St. Lucie County and on the Treasure Coast. So we're going to talk a little bit about your background, Darryl, before we go on to talk about Bluebird Educational Foundation itself and the shows that you bring and the people that benefit and the youth that have the opportunity to make music where they might otherwise make music. So let's start. So how long have you been in St. Lucie County?
This year, 30 years.
Wow, yeah. I came to town just about the same time you did, because we came like 32 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so you remember like downtown Fort Pierce when they had the parallel parking and the side parking, and before it became a main street where they had they changed everything around and just changed the whole feel of Main Street, and before the Sunrise Theater reopened.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah.
So you were here on the cusp of the musical and artistic transformation of downtown Fort Pierce. Not that, of course, there hasn't been so much culture here on the Treasure Coast for years before, but once Sunrise Theater was opened and created a venue for entertainers, it really changed the music scene here in St. Lucie County a lot. So have you always been a musician?
Yes, I came from a family who it was you had to be musical. You had to play an instrument. There was no ifs, ands, and buts about it. I wasn't a good athlete, so I held my musicianship over my friends who were all athletes, basketball players, football players. And when they would ridicule me because I wasn't a good athlete, I'd say, okay, can you play a trombone? And they're like, well, no. So I said, well, leave me alone.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've been involved with music all my life, from a kid through grade school, through high school, college, and in my professional life, I had a career in the construction industry, but I also had a career in music at the same time.
In performing music?
not necessarily performing music, but in producing, curating, and providing entertainment for different musical events and opportunities.
Well, tell us how that all got started.
Well, after leaving college, I went to the Cleveland Institute of Music, and after leaving college, I decided that my stronger suit I discovered that my stronger suit was curating and pairing musicians with audiences and producing shows. So I decided that fit me better, and that was my way of being in the entertainment business and being able to be successful at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Well, trombonists also, they're not usually the stars of the show.
Well,
they're not the leading man in a production, except for maybe if you're doing the Music Man.
Yeah. Well, the trombone, the trumpet is usually the star of the band, the orchestra. Yeah. But trombone does take a back seat to that. But it's a part of the brass section, and the brass section in music is an important part.
It is. It changes the whole sound if somebody has that brass section following with them or a part of their sound. So you began, as you said, being the matchmaker between venues and musicians, and started producing shows. And how did you get involved in the music scene? Was it immediate when you first came to St. Lucie County 30 years ago?
No, I was involved. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio originally, and I used to promote shows in Cleveland, Ohio. And I was instrumental in the founding of the Northeast Ohio Jazz Society, because I've been involved with jazz. My family were great jazz listeners and supporters, so I was one of the founders of the Northeast Ohio Jazz Society. And when I came to Fort Pierce 30 years ago, I ran into a gentleman who had a bright idea of who wanted to form a jazz society. And I happened to say, well, I've done that before. And they were like, oh, yeah, well, we need to do that here. So we did it here. I was one of the founders. Larry Lee and myself were the founders of the Fort Pierce Jazz. At the time, it was the Fort Pierce Jazz Society. We founded the Fort Pierce Jazz Society, and that kind of turned the table of entertainment in Fort Pierce. People started to come. This was back in the middle to late 90s. People used to come to Fort Pierce because we had the brightest jazz scene going on the Treasure Coast.
And you had some not open mic, but whatever, open nights where anybody could come and be a part.
We had jazz jam sessions.
That's what
once a
called,
week.
Jazz
jams. And one of the good things about this area, a lot of musicians come here to retire. So we had a lot of musicians, professional musicians that lived in the area, and before we formed the Jazz Society, there was not a lot of opportunities for these guys to perform. And we were fortunate that we had really great musicians that would perform. We used to have some incredible jazz jam sessions. And we've had some notable musicians come here to play. And I can't, because that was back in 1997, 1998, so I can't remember that far back, some of the notable musicians. But we had notable musicians that came here and performed in our jam sessions, yeah.
And it was like people got to come and they got to listen to, if you wanted to sit in the audience, because I know there were jazz jams that I attended sitting in the audience. And before the Sunrise Theater opened, you had them. Where did you have them? Didn't you have?
We started out at a little bookshop on US 1, Tanaj Books, and we started out there. And the place only held. The place was only supposed to hold 35 people, 35, 40 people.
Yeah.
And there were times when we had 100 people there.
Right.
So we outgrew that place, and then we went downtown to it was a church downtown whose name is part of the Vineyard Circuit now, but it was a church downtown.
Oh, I remember what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It was like right across the street from where Sailfish Brewery is
yeah,
now.
Yeah, Max and Mrch
Yeah,
also.
yeah.
In the Coke building.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
And Reverend Todd Smith was the pastor of the church. And they allowed us to come there and have our jazz jams there in the church. And that lasted probably for about 3 or 4 years. And then we moved to the what is called now the Riverwalk Center. And we were there for a number of years. And then we moved to we left the church, and we were invited to come to a jazz club that opened in Fort Pierce called the House of Jazz. And unfortunately, it only lasted a year.
Yeah.
So we left there and we went to the Riverwalk Center, which was called the Fort Pierce Community Center at that time.
Yeah.
And we were there for a number of years.
That's where I had attended or watched, because I don't play an instrument anymore, although I did in junior high and for a little bit in high school. But you know, once you've developed that love for music, it just doesn't go away.
Exactly.
And whether you're performing or sitting in the audience listening and enjoying, or listening to the music on a record player or a CD, isn't it funny how everything old is new again? I know you're laughing at the record player thing.
Exactly. But no, records are in again.
Yeah, records are back. If I had known I had such a record collection and I did not save it, if I'd known. So once you're in, once culture has got you, it just won't let you go. And over the last 30 years, since we've both lived in St. Lucie County, there's just really been a resurgence, like I said, of the arts, including the musical arts. And you have continued with the Fort Pierce Jazz Society, and then at one point, what was the point where you started Bluebird?
Well, I was, of course, I was one of the founders, and I was president, and then I became executive director. I was associated with the Jazz Society for 11 years, and after I left the Jazz Society, well, before I left the Jazz Society, I started an organization called Bluebird Productions. And Bluebird Productions was a for-profit concert promotion company. And I used to do shows around town at the old City Hall, at the Riverwalk Center, at the Fort Pierce Yacht Club. I used to do shows at St. Andrew's Church.
And they weren't all just jazz shows. You brought in different musical acts, right?
They were mostly jazz shows.
Yeah, because I know that we've attended some of those as well. I can just picture those posters around town, because you used to put up the posters too. Yeah. And then when did you open it as a foundation? When did you decide that there was a need for a foundation?
Well, at one point we were doing we were being sponsored by the Fort Pierce Redevelopment Agency to do a concert series on the marina, and the first year we were there were no restrictions on whether you could be profit or nonprofit. But the second year, the restriction was that they could only give money to nonprofit organizations. So we, by the grace of God, were able to get a 501c3 and form, which was called at the time Bluebird Educational Productions. And we continued our concert series, which was called Music on the Plaza. We were able to continue to get funding from the Fort Pierce Redevelopment Agency.
And how long did that last?
That lasted for about 3 years. And then we went into some kind of financial slump, economic slump in the country. And, you know, they called me and said, Darryl, don't even think about trying to get any money from us again.
and that's the way, that's the direction everybody went in, unfortunately, with the arts. It was like, even in the schools, you know, they were cutting back on the arts, and that wasn't the priority anymore. And you know, now, and that's one of the reasons why, as an education foundation, one of your missions is to provide musical opportunities for youth.
Absolutely, yeah.
Let's talk about how you got to that.
Well, once we formed the foundation, and the progression was, so we were Bluebird Educational Productions, but since I had a company called Bluebird Productions and I had another company called Bluebird Educational Productions, there was no way that people could relate that it was a nonprofit.
Right.
So we went to the state and we changed it to Bluebird Educational Foundation so that the name foundation would align with people that this was nonprofit, it was 501c3, and it was charitable.
Right.
So we did that, and then we started working in schools. And I've had connections with the St. Lucie County School District for a long time now, and we started bringing, when we would present concerts, we would bring national touring acts in, and part of the contractual agreement was that they had to work in schools with kids during the day, and then they would do a concert at night. And in later years, we even got it to the point where the kids and the national touring artists would interact, where the local bands, local high school bands, would open for national touring artists.
I was just going to say that. I thought that I remembered that. So, because actually, I think the LPA jazz band, during one of the years I was teaching there, was opening for one of your acts.
Yeah. LPA opened. Port St. Lucie High School opened. Treasure Coast High School has opened for a major act.
And that is so life-changing for those high school students.
It is.
To be able to be on the stage and in front of the audience that, major jazz names are going to be appearing.
And it was amazing. I remember going to a rehearsal at Port St. Lucie High School before a regular rehearsal. And then I remember going back after the day that the national touring artist was there, preparing them for the show that night. And that night at the hall, at the Black Box, at the Sunrise, those kids sounded, their level of playing just went through the roof. And that was just as a result of the exposure of being mentored for that day by these national professional touring artists.
As a former member of the band years ago, I know that attitude has a lot to. Sure, practice means a lot too, and you have to be able to have command of your instrument. But attitude, specifically positive attitude, knowing like if you're a trumpet or a trombone player, you are going to hit that high note. Your tone quality is going to be the sweetest. If you're a clarinet, you're knowing that people believe in you means a lot when you're in the music business.
Absolutely, yeah.
Especially when you're a young person who may not be going into the music business as a career, but may be using it either to move on to college with a scholarship or just for the delight and privilege of being able to be a musician. You just have a different ear. You have a different way of looking at life as a musician.
And I think one of the things that music did for me growing up as a kid, it kept my brother and sisters and I so busy that we didn't have time to get in trouble because we were either going to music lessons, performances, rehearsals, and so I remember kids getting in trouble because they weren't, they didn't have
they were
stuff
bored.
to do.
Yeah.
And my parents kept us busy, and it kept us out of trouble.
So take me back just a minute to so everybody in the family when you were growing up was expected to play an instrument.
Yes.
What were your other siblings playing, and did you have like regular jazz sessions at home?
Well, when we were kids playing at home, by the time the jazz came into the picture, my brother played drums, my youngest sister played violin, and my older sister played clarinet. Now my brother and my youngest sister dropped out of playing. But my oldest sister and I kept it going, and then finally my oldest sister dropped out, and I kept playing.
Yeah.
So I think my oldest sister played through high school. We both played through high school. But when my sister went to college, she didn't play through college. I played in college. Yeah.
So I stopped playing clarinet in 9th grade, but I kept my clarinet, and I moved it with me when I went away to college, and I kept it in the closet, and occasionally I would take it out and still just play for my own enjoyment. And then I think I moved it to my first after college home, and I hadn't opened the case or done anything with the clarinet in years, and was not thinking about the fact that it would the reed that I had left on the instrument would completely disintegrate, and the pads on the clarinet would completely disintegrate. And so I remember opening it, like feeling like a moment of joy that I was opening my clarinet again, and seeing it had completely fallen apart in the case. But you just feel like, you've got it in your head. Once you've, as a clarinet player, when I listen to music still, I mean, it's been 30 years since I picked up a clarinet that did not fall apart. No, 40 years. Maybe closer to 50. But I still, when I listen to music, I hear the clarinet part. I still hear what they're doing, and I still have appreciation of music. I think that's more than someone who did not grow up with music in their house. There was a time too when both my children played some kind of instrument too, just to try it out. And in elementary school for a while, they had opportunities to play recorders, and Chloe decided that she was going to be a drummer, so she played the drums for a while, and it didn't stay with her, but I watched the kids that stayed with the music, and not just music, but any type of after-school activity that you become committed to. It does keep you busy and inspired and out of trouble wherever you're growing up. So you want to offer that privilege to other young people. I mean, a lot of times young people can't play an instrument because they can't afford an instrument. And I know that they have, back when I was in school and when my kids were in school, there were rental agreements where you could rent your instrument and then get ability to take it home. But a lot of people just can't afford that. And especially for those kids who do want it to be something that they're committed to, that they're going on to college like you did, and studying, and they want to continue to bring music to the world. How does Bluebird Foundation help to make that happen?
Well, we just happen to have a program called Recycling in the Key of E, and it harkens to something that you just mentioned, where most kids, quite a few kids that go through school play an instrument, but some play for a year, some play for a semester, some play through grade school, through all the way through school, and then that instrument ends up in their closet or their basement, in their attic. Well, our Recycling in the Key of E program, we ask people to give those instruments, donate those instruments to our foundation. We will fix them up, replace all the disintegrated pads, and make them ready for kids who want to play, who can't afford to buy or rent. And that's a program that we have. So that's one of the things that we do. And since 2008, we've given away over 700 instruments to kids who want to play, who can't afford to rent or purchase.
How do you find those kids?
We have a liaison. We have a liaison that works with our group, who work work in the school system, teachers, district administrators, and they have relationships with the band directors and people in the music department in the schools, and they tell us who the kids are who are most likely to succeed if we give them an instrument, which in most times are refurbished, which are almost like new, and we also have an anonymous donor who writes a check for us to give away a new instrument to a kid every year. So there's an opportunity there.
Is there an opportunity too for you're a nonprofit foundation now? So how else do you collect money to give back to the community to make things happen?
Well, some of the programs that we have, they're earmarked. The proceeds from those programs are earmarked to go toward certain programs that we present.
Okay, tell us more about the programs.
Well, most of our concerts, the proceeds from our concerts go back to support our programs. Before COVID, we had a very popular concert called Grooving and Tasting that used to be held on the roof of the City of Fort Pierce parking garage. And 100% of the proceeds from that event used to go toward our Recycling in the Key of E program.
COVID really took a bite out of entertainment events, and especially the nonprofit ones, because people didn't want to be in a crowd, even to listen to music. So you've had to kind of fight your way back from that. And
yes.
So after COVID, I know you started off doing smaller events. And outdoor events are always, people have a higher comfort level there too. I want to spend some time talking about Jazz Appreciation Month, because that's April.
Yes.
And we're right around the corner from April here. And you have an event coming up called the Trumpet Summit. So, Trumpet Summit. And it's featuring Dr. Ken Trimmings and Dr. Lonigo Parsons?
Longinu Parsons.
Longinu,
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Tell us more about that and what we can expect.
Well, part of the reason that we brought these two educators in is because we wanted to have an opportunity for them to share their experiences and their expertise with students. And what we have set up is the concert is on Thursday, April 20th at the Sunrise Theater Black Box, and on Wednesday, these two doctors are going to work with students via master classes and demonstrations. And also, what we're trying to establish is we're trying to also work with teachers, because we're trying to build the jazz band programs, strengthen the jazz band programs in the schools, because most of the jazz band programs in all the schools around the country are weak because they're not getting a lot of support. And we have schools here, Lincoln Park Academy, Treasure Coast, Fort Pierce Central, Port St. Lucie High School. They all have jazz bands, and we want to help strengthen those programs. And by bringing in these clinicians to work with the students, then we thought, well, maybe we could help the teachers so that they can assist them. We can assist them in being better instructors. Not that they're not good now.
Right, but just to bring them up to an even higher level.
Exactly.
Yeah. So when you say doctor, they are doctors of
education,
education
yes.
and music, and they're both trumpet players.
Both trumpet players, correct.
So they're not just going to be talking about it; they're going to be demonstrating as well
at the concert.
Yeah, no, but I mean at the when they're talking to the teachers, they're speaking from a place of experience. They're not just telling the teachers or the students what to do. they're going to be talking about what they did.
Exactly. And they're educators, and they have active programs that they're facilitating at their respective colleges. Dr. Ken Trimmons is at Albany State University, and Dr. Longenu Parsons is at Florida A&M University. So they're both heavily involved with the music programs at those schools.
And both of the schools are renowned for their music programs, especially Florida A&M. I'm familiar with too.
Exactly.
The brass section there in the marching band is something, just something. So the Appreciation Month. What else do you have going on for April? Do you have any other events that are going on for April?
Well, beside the concert, we have a pre-show dinner that's happening the same night as the concert, the pre-show dinner. But other than the pre-show dinner and the concert itself, that's our Jazz Appreciation Month event.
Okay.
And one of the things about Jazz Appreciation Month, it tries to bring attention to jazz, and one of the objects is to get people for that month to think about jazz, to buy a jazz record, go to a jazz concert, listen to jazz music, support jazz, and that sort of thing. So that's our Jazz Appreciation Month activity for this year.
I gotcha.
Last year we did April. The last day of April is International Jazz Day around the world. And last year, instead of doing a Jazz Appreciation Month event, we did a International Jazz Day event. So in future years, we hope to develop different and varied programs during the month. So we'll have multiple events going on during the month of April.
As far as the concert itself, people can buy tickets already, correct?
Yes. You can buy tickets at the Sunrise Theater box office or go online to the Sunrise Theater box office site, www.sunrisetheater.org, to buy tickets.
And they're $25 in advance or $30 at the door, and there's a special student price for only $10.
Correct.
So these gentlemen are presenting the Trumpet Summit. Is there a difference in describing jazz music that is vocal compared to jazz music that's only instrumental? Or I shouldn't use the word only, because the instruments themselves are the song, the lyrics. But like, this is going to be instrumental, or do you have any vocal guests that will be joining them?
There'll be no vocal guests.
Okay, so
this will be a concert of instrumental music.
And is it only trumpets, or do they have any band that's going to be performing along with them?
Yes, we have a local professional rhythm section, piano, bass, and drums that will be supporting them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I figured, but I just wanted to be clear about it for describing it. So you couldn't do stuff like this without having community partners, I know. And so you have had, I know Florida A&M University and the Brown family. Who's the Fluffy Fund?
The Fluffy Fund is an anonymous couple who are arts and music and jazz lovers, and they want to see our music programs strengthened, our jazz programs in particular strengthened in our county. And they do it for the love of the music and to help give kids an opportunity. Because in our community we have parts of our community can be economically disadvantaged, and in those types of communities, people can't afford to do these sorts of things. They can't afford music lessons. They can't afford to rent or buy instruments. And there are people who recognize that and want to help, because I think one of the things that music does, as it did for me, it not only does it keep you out of trouble, but it changes your life to where you start looking at the more artistic and creative things in life as opposed to, other destructive type of things. And it makes you different and a better person.
Kind of makes your life technicolor.
Yeah.
So you do have the Trumpet Summit coming up, but also in providing instruments and funds to the students to be able to continue their music education. I mean, we're really blessed here on the Treasure Coast that we have so many public high schools that offer strong music programs.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes in order to take advantage of those music programs, you've got to be the organization that steps up and provides the instrument to the student that needs it.
Yeah.
Because, as you said, music could absolutely and will absolutely change their life, but, to not be able to do it or not be able to be competitive. Like, for example, some of the schools may have an opportunity for the students to use an instrument at school,
Mm-hmm.
but then they can't take it home.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're not going to be able to be competitive with the kids who have their instruments that they can take home
Mm-hmm.
and practice every day.
Mm-hmm. And we have a slogan that we want to put instruments in kids' hands instead of guns. And there's such
That's
an
strong.
emphasis,
Yeah.
such an emphasis on guns these days. And,
Yeah.
So we want to change that narrative and have kids pointing instruments at each other instead of guns.
Yeah, and making beautiful music together. The other thing that playing in a jazz band or any other type of musical group does, it teaches children cooperation. I know we've talked before on this radio show about the strengths of teamwork and sports teams, but certainly being part of a band or a jazz group or a chorus or something like that, you have got to be cooperative and work with other people, because on your own, you're not as strong as you are as your group.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's a whole different lesson that it teaches you as you move on in life beyond college.
Mm-hmm.
I know it was funny because when I taught both at LPA and at Port St. Lucie High, the kids that were in band were the strongest students. Mm-hmm. They were the strongest academically as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that they have a work culture, a work ethic of working hard, and they're able to, reading music translates very frequently into other areas of your academic life.
Yeah, math in particular. Yeah, science. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, reading. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it can change your life. How can the listening public help? How can they be a part of that? Obviously, they can come to the Trumpet Summit on April 20th, and you can buy your tickets now through the Sunrise Theater website. But how else can they contribute or be a part of it? Do you look for volunteers? Do you have other special events? What if you're a retired musician who wants to get together and play?
Well, we take donations for our programs and our Recycling the Key musical instrument donation program. We take donations for our programs, for our instruments, and we take those people who have these instruments, like you, sitting in their closets or in their attics or in their basements. We ask that you give them to us so that we can give them to kids and we can put them to use.
And I know that you're no longer president of the Jazz Society, but there is still a Jazz Society in town too.
There's still the Fort Pierce Jazz and Blues Society. They're very active. They have summer camps. They have educational programs that they do in the schools. So they're still active. In fact, the month of April, I think they're having their Jazz Week celebration where they'll be doing different jazz and blues events on the marina in downtown.
And you can get that information by looking at the Fort Pierce Main Street social media or the downtown Fort Pierce social media. There's all sorts of different events that are coming up as well. So can people actually come and volunteer with Bluebird, or you have your board of directors is made up of local people.
Yes.
And how do they help you move forward? What is your next step? How do you see Bluebird moving forward in the future?
Well, since COVID, we're kind of like in a reorganization and rebuilding mode, and we're actually looking for board of director people who have a passion for music and to want to help children, help volunteer, and one of the major roles of a board of director is to help raise money, because everything that we do costs money, and all of the money that we get goes toward our programs. We don't have a paid staff or any of that. The money goes toward our programs.
And even events that you do, you don't have your event ticket prices are low enough where it's not something that is a big fundraiser for you. It just really covers the cost of bringing people into town and the performance and the venue. So in order to have the funds to run the programs that you do, you need development funds.
Exactly. And the prices are low so that it gives people an opportunity to come, so it's affordable. Yeah.
Let's talk for a minute about, even if you're not a musician, how the appreciation of music and being a part of music, listening, even as part of the listening audience, can change people's lives.
Well, I have people tell me all the time, oh, man, I wish I could play an instrument. I hate that I can't play an instrument. But if we had a bunch of musicians without an audience, then, it takes an audience to have, musicians have to play to someone. And so the audience's role in this whole equation is just as important as as musicians. So being a supporter, being a good listener, buying tickets to shows, that is just as important as being able to play an instrument, because you enable musicians to have a life, to be able to do their work.
Beyond supporting musicians too, we're also looking at how music in general calms people and makes them feel connected to the rest of the world. A lot of times, you bring in musicians or focus on musicians who come from other parts of the country or even other parts of the world. So concerts or listening to music, records or CDs or, the radio or however you do it, or Pandora, Spotify. It's like a lending library of music, which, by the way, you can also borrow music from our local libraries too.
Absolutely.
Which is really cool. So you could learn about music that way. You could also donate your instrument and make things different for youth that are growing up in the community that need. But the simple thing is to come and support by being an audience member and learning to appreciate music. What do you have coming up the rest of the year? What are some of the other events, or are there any other things planned or in the works?
Well, we have some things planned in the works. I really can't talk about
Yeah,
them right
no
now.
dates yet. But
No dates, yeah. But typically, we work around season, around Thanksgiving to Easter. That's basically the window that we operate within. And right now, I'm entertaining programs, master classes, concerts for the 2023-2024 season.
So what is important to you is not just the musical component, but the educational component too. And
Absolutely.
continuing to, when you talk about master classes, you're talking about classes for our high school students?
Yes, yes. When we bring in artists and they conduct master classes, one component of the master class is a performance component. Usually, what we try to do is have some interaction between the students and the professional musicians. And oftentimes, they will recommend certain music that the kids will play. They'll play with the artists when they come to town. So they'll send music in advance, and the band directors will work on that music with the kids months in advance. And then when the clinician comes to town, they tighten up all of the issues that the kids may have had with the music and make them really strong with the music, so that when they perform with these artists, they have a really good feeling about what they're doing.
That's awesome. And it's great to be able to, I know my son was very involved in drama in high school and in college and in musical theater. And having the experts come and talk to you about something that you're aspiring to do makes it so much more important to you, and feeling like that you can do anything, that you can accomplish anything, especially seeing that, they've created a situation where they've made it into their career. Do the people who come also talk about the different options in a musical career? For example, you, even though you stayed with band and with a trombone in college, you realized that you wanted to be more on the producing end. What are some career options for people who want to be around music the rest of their life or most of their lives?
Well, there's the teaching option. There's the promoting, production, sound men, because the musicians you're no better than your sound man. So
right,
there are
right,
technical
right.
options. There's lighting options, because the sound, lights, all of that, those are components that make great performances. There are agents. Agents represent artists. Contractually, they represent artists. There are talent agency opportunities, record company opportunities. There are a myriad of opportunities in music beyond the actual performance aspect.
So if music is something that you love and you want to continue to be a part of, there's a lot of different opportunities. Darryl, I know, we talked a little bit about your roots. We've got a few more minutes. And I know that you have been a part of this community and the music community, having helped to start the Jazz Society before it was the Jazz and Blues Society, and now as part of Bluebird Educational Foundation. Are there any other things that you have in the works? I mean, now, we're learning to live with COVID. I mean, COVID is not going away completely, but it's time that we moved on and we can continue to. How do you see the world of music on the Treasure Coast continuing to grow for people who are out there doing productions like these?
Well, there's a couple things. Number one, our primary objective is to strengthen the music and band programs. And one of the ways we want to do that is down the road we want to be able to provide piano lessons for kids, because the piano is the fundamental instrument that you need to know to be a musician. It doesn't matter what instrument you play. And you'll find that musicians who have a good understanding of the piano are better musicians on their horns or clarinets, trombones, or whatever. The piano is important for kids who want to be musicians at any stage, whether it's in school, whether it's as a professional. Yeah.
That's interesting, because I remember trying to tell my kids that when they were little, and I wanted them to get piano lessons, and they did get piano lessons. And both of them said, but we don't want to play piano. That's not what we want to do. And as it turned out, my son Jake went full circle, because he got full into musical theater, but then as he started singing at home, he realized that those piano lessons that he took in like 3rd and 4th grade, he wished that he'd paid attention to them now, and he started teaching himself how to play piano, because it was so important in order to move forward in music. Because when you want to be singing, you want to be able to accompany yourself. But I can remember the pushback from them and their friends when all the parents in the neighborhood were trying to push toward piano lessons, because our feeling too was that it was a foundational experience. And we were lucky that that was something that we were able to afford. But to create an environment with young people today where you are able to offer that foundational step for them to learn to play the piano and appreciate music, and then who knows if it takes them 20 years or 30 years to come back around and realize how important music is to them, at least they'll have that foundational step.
Absolutely.
How can people get in touch with you?
Info at bluebirdeducationalfoundation.org. That's our address.
And then do you have social media that people can like and share your events?
Yes, we have a Facebook account. If you search Bluebird Educational Foundation, our Facebook account will come up.
Okay, so you can look on Facebook and you can reach out to Darryl, or you can just Google Bluebird Educational Foundation.
Exactly.
We've been talking to Darryl Bay. He is the founder and president for Bluebird Educational Foundation, offering information and help to students in the musical direction on the Treasure Coast. And a trumpet summit is coming up on April 20th, and you can find out more on their social media. Darryl, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure, and we will see you next